It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Well, happy Easter for all our Orthodox Christian viewers and Orthodox people throughout the world. A message which seems to have slipped the mind of the British government, who are normally fastidious about marking such anniversaries. And happy Cosmonautics Day here in Moscow, celebrated wildly because, of course, on this day in 1961, the USSR sent the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into space. And Kana has again been the subject of a horrific massacre. I spoke in the House of Commons almost 30 years ago on the massacre of the innocents in the very spot where Jesus performed his first miracle, turning water into wine. I know he shouldn't have done that, but it will take more than a miracle for Donald Trump's latest wheeze to have any positive effect on the world economy. It's all coming up because it is the mother of all talk shows. It was Jesus' first miracle. It was the tiny Christian place called Cana in the south of Lebanon. He turned water into wine. Long time ago, when I still had a lot of dark hair, I challenged the then Deputy Prime Minister of Great Britain, Michael Heseltine, as to whether or not he had witnessed the scene where a massacre of Fijian United Nations peacekeepers and mothers and children, by the dozen, though it turned out to be by the hundreds, had just taken place an hour before. As it was, he had, or at least he was briefed on the massacre, and he spoke of the Israeli crime in ways which no Deputy Prime Minister in Britain today would ever dare. In those days, they laughably still clung to something called a peace process. They deplored the fact that these massacres damaged the peace process. Now the peace process is long forgotten. and nobody damns the massacres. Massacres everywhere. Massacres in South Lebanon and in Beirut. There was a temporary abeyance of Israeli attacks on Beirut whilst the negotiators were in Islamabad, but they were only there for 20 hours, and so Israel has returned like a dog to its vomit to the mass killing of civilian people in the capital of an Arab country, Lebanon. We've got a guest coming up who, like me, loves Lebanon, but she loves it so much she's lived there for years and produced some of the best photojournalism from the trials and tribulations of the Lebanese people there, which will stand the test of time. People 100 years from now will look at her documentary journalism and wonder, how could we ever have allowed Israel to go so far? Let's go to Islamabad now. The situation there is much as I described it in my monologue last time. The proceedings were an elaborate hoax, and this was unveiled by so-called Vice President J.D. Vance. I say so-called because it's quite clear now that Marco Rubio has got the nod. He's been anointed. I saw Donald Trump laying on hands at a UFC fight, mixed martial arts, in Florida, where incidentally Trump was roundly booed by the crowd. In Florida, well, why should that be a surprise? The Republicans are about to lose Texas for the first time in 30 years, about which more later. It's quite clear why Rubio wasn't sent there, even though he is the Foreign Secretary of the United States. It's quite clear why J.D. Vance was sent there, with instructions to phone Donald Trump at every turn. And in the end, according to Vance, he called Trump, or Trump called him, 21 times in a 20-hour negotiating session. So he clearly wasn't sent with a mandate to make a deal, and no deal was made. He also took a call from Benjamin Netanyahu when it said that Vance was beginning to wobble a little, was beginning to feel a little bit expansive towards his Iranian interlocutors. You might well ask, who told Netanyahu that Vance was in need of a bit of stiffening up? No prizes for guessing. It would be Jared Kushner, or it would be Steve Witkoff, or perhaps both. But once Netanyahu had spoken with his master's voice, then that was the end, meaningfully, of any possibility of the talks succeeding. The Washington Post had actually threatened to murder. The United States still doesn't seem to get this, so I'm going to repeat it. When the Washington Post said, the Iranian negotiators' very lives depend on them reaching agreement with Donald Trump, so they'd better do so. Well, I keep saying this, I'm going to repeat it. You cannot threaten martyrdom to people who are in the business of martyrdom. Anyone who understands the Shia branch of Islam, based on the martyrdom of the Imam Hussein, knows that threatening death to a Shia Muslim is to threaten him with a good time. It's to threaten him with a ticket to paradise. The Washington Post, highly paid writers, clearly haven't grasped that point. But the United States was openly threatening to murder the people that it was in negotiation with, and why shouldn't they? They've already done that twice before. They murdered the negotiators in the 12-day war last July. They murdered the negotiators last month when they began this war. Anyway, talking of miracles, Donald Trump has come up with one. He's going to blockade the blockade, which is blocking the straits, which were never blocked before he started the war, which blockaded it. In any case, it isn't blockaded. All you've got to do is be either a friend of or at least neutral in the Israeli-American aggression against Iran, and your ships can go freely through the straits. Not quite freely. There's a tax, a local tax, just like the one charged by Belize, just like the one charged in the Suez Canal. And for those who say these are international waters, stop demonstrating your idiocy. There's a 12-mile nautical waterway in the Straits of Hormuz. It's 21 miles wide, and Oman has its 12 miles. Do the math, as the Americans are fond of saying. Between Iran and Oman, the Strait of Hormuz belongs to them. And I expressed surprise at the beginning of this conflict that actually they've never charged tolls before, but they sure as hell are now, after all the damage and devastation that has been caused. Moreover, it'll have to be paid in Iranian rials or in Oman currency, or it could be paid in Chinese currency. It's all part of breaking the hegemony, the domination of the petrodollar. And who can blame them for that? That's the source of so many of the problems in the Persian Gulf area, in the Middle East as a whole. So Donald Trump is now going to blockade all ships coming out of the Straits of Hormuz. That's a wheeze, isn't it? With petrol prices ballooning all over the world, except those places that have run out of petrol already. And don't think it's only Western countries, although they are feeling the pinch. Countries all over Asia have ground to a halt already with the lack of supply, and where there is supply, the lack of affordability. So to stop all traffic coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, in defense of your demand that all traffic must be allowed to pass through it, is definitely imaginative. Let's talk about how it's going to operate. Well, first of all, let me state the bleeding obvious. A blockade can only be maintained by American warships. There are no American warships anywhere near the Straits of Hormuz, and there have never been throughout the 40-day war, which is about to continue after this interregnum ends in just a few days. None of the gigantic flotilla of American warships went anywhere near the Iranian coast. Not a lot of people know that. The media very carefully avoided telling you that. And they didn't do so for the obvious reason that Iran's ballistic missile and drone capability made it completely deadly, fatal, especially for the bigger ships. You know, these aircraft carriers, for example. The United States had 3 of them, 1,200 kilometers away. But if they're going to maintain a blockade, well, they're going to have to come a lot closer than that. And when they do, the anti-ship missile capability of Iran will tear them to pieces. Davy Jones Locker awaits any American personnel on board the ships imposing this blockade. But let's just say that the Iranians decided not to fire on the American warships and the blockade became total. Well, tomorrow oil will reach $150 a barrel. If not tomorrow, then by the end of the week. $150. In fact, physical oil, as opposed to paper oil, is already past $150 per barrel. If there's a total blockade, i.e. no oil at all, then what's the price going to be? What's the availability going to be? How is the European economy going to even function? Never mind function at full value. How is the Asian economy? How are all these allies of the United States on the Arabian side of the Gulf, in Asia, in other parts of the world? They're not going to have any fuel. Fuel is the new water. Already in Ireland, in Britain, in France, people are on the march against the current state of affairs so far as availability of petrol and diesel is concerned. The government called a Cobra meeting this week in London, in Whitehall. No doubt they were discussing calling fuel protests terrorism. Why not? They call everything else they don't like terrorism. They called me and my wife terrorists when they held us under the terrorism legislation. They arrested another 530 people in London yesterday, almost all of them old age pensioners, some of them in their 80s, most of them with walking sticks, some of them in wheelchairs. Took 5 cops to arrest every old age pensioner under the Terrorism Act for holding up a piece of paper bearing words that the British government didn't like. So watch out, fuel protesters. They'll be calling you terrorists next. And you'll say to yourself, when Galloway was held under the Terrorism Act, we weren't Galloway, so we said nothing. Careful what you wish for. But back to my point. If there's a total blockade, if it's a success, there will be no oil. There will be no natural gas. There will be no LPG. There will be nothing to fuel the world economy. How's that going to work out, Donny? And if you have a different wheeze of Saudi Arabia trucking its output to the Red Sea, then be sure that the Yemeni armed forces, Ansar Allah, will immediately block the Red Sea, which means blocking the Suez Canal, which means nothing going through the Suez Canal, nothing going out the Straits of Hormuz, nothing going into the Red Sea. This is a recipe for a 1929 crash. Never mind a recession. Never mind even a depression. 1929 was the onset of the Great Depression. And that's what we are headed towards. And for what? J.D. Vance said this evening, this will not be solved until we have a nuclear treaty. But you had a nuclear treaty. Donald Trump ripped it up just because it had Barack Obama's name on it. It was a nuclear treaty more restrictive than the schema that you were negotiating with them for in Islamabad. The IAEA and every other responsible authority told us over and over again that there was zero evidence of Iran trying to develop a nuclear weapon. The US continues to lie that Iran will not give up their pursuit of the nuclear bomb. I know why they're saying that. Because they have to. What else could possibly justify the farce that Trump is now proposing? The real reason is the Straits of Hormuz, which were entirely unblocked before he began this war of choice. It's nothing to do with a nuclear bomb that Iran continues to turn its face against. So, a nuclear treaty, JD? Well, let's say this. Any Iranian statesman watching your performance over the last 40 days, watching the evil intentions of you and your little brother, as Donald Trump put it today, we're big brother, Israel is little brother. I've never known a big brother in such a state of deference to a little brother ever in the history of fraternal relations. Certainly not in my family. You're the big brother, Don? Yeah, right. Maybe at the UFC in Florida, but then hearing that booing, probably not. Well, the evil intentions of Israel and the United States towards the great ancient civilization of Iran, which you literally threatened to end with a nuclear bomb. Or bombs, because one wouldn't do it, Donny. It'll have to be a double tap, you know. You're fond of those. It'll have to be Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And maybe a bit more, but nuclear physics is not your bag, I know. In fact, I'm not sure what your bag could possibly, conceivably, plausibly be described as. But if you drop nuclear bombs on Iran and finish it in 1 hour, as you again threatened this day to do, beware of one thing. Human life will immediately become uninhabitable throughout the Persian Gulf. That means no more Mr. Nice Guy, the emir of this or the sheikh of that. It means no more Dubai. It means no more play dates with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. It means that the entirety of the Persian Gulf will become a desert again, without oil, without gas, without casinos, without the frolicking Rabelaisian ribaldry to which you and your Epstein class have over decades become familiar. So be careful what you wish for, Donny. I've followed that rubric all of my life. I really feel that Donald Trump must be the victim of a blackmail plot so dark that he literally cannot refuse Netanyahu anything. It's the only way to explain bringing down the world economy, putting thousands of American service personnel in the darkest of corners in harm's way, of destroying your own puppet regimes in Arabia, and of ending economic activity as we knew it in the developed world. I don't know what went on at your parties with Jeffrey Epstein, Don, although Melania does. I'm sure about that. And who knows, maybe she's fixing to tell us. We'll ask Scott Ritter about that later in the show. But stay tuned. This is the mother of all talk shows. Let me say that you can listen to the audio-only version of Moats on our Moats podcast, and the numbers on that are going through the roof. Just search Moats with George Galloway on Apple, Spotify, Google, or whichever platform you listen to your podcasts on. In recent weeks, it's been the #1 political podcast in Benin, Jordan, the Gambia, Qatar, Jamaica, Ghana, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, Sweden, and the Philippines. #1 political podcast in all those countries. Truly, truly phenomenal. Do you know that BBC News has lost 40% of its audience in the last 2 years? It's official. And of course, that is the sensible thing to do. But to get people to tune in and change course and listen to a radically different point of view is even more difficult. But it's happening. And the numbers that we are racking up are now in their millions.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
You're watching the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from Moscow. Is Melania Trump lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? Oh, pretty overwhelming. Yes to this particular poll. Yes, 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 you might say. 40,000 people have voted, though. I want to highlight this absurdity. So absurd that I laugh about it rather than cry. On our poll, on the YouTube community poll, 34,000 people have voted overwhelmingly yes. But on X, on Elon Musk's free speech platform, only 496 people have voted. And I have nearly 1 million followers on X. 1 million followers, 34,000 votes on YouTube, where I have fewer subscribers, and 496 people were shown the poll. Mr. Musk, you're making a fool of yourself. You're not harming us in any way. This is still a massive poll. It's 40,000 already. It's you who is harmed, your reputation, which is harmed by this kind of blatant, shameless censorship. And it's not only because we're dealing with Melania Trump. Look, like the mafia, I always forswore from attacking the wives of my adversaries. But since they attacked my own wife at Gatwick Airport, I've had to amend my attitude to that a little. And in any case, Melania Trump seems to me to be fixing to turn Queen's evidence, as we say in Britain, on Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's a legitimate poll, as most of you are now recognizing. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number 0044203 966 2625. Now, Courtney Bonneau is a journalist from another era. She's the Martha Gellhorn of De Nos Jours. The work that she has done in cataloguing the lives and deaths of the people of Lebanon, a country much beloved by me and even more by her. Freelance photojournalist and war correspondent. A name, war correspondent, which you don't find a lot of these days. And she's our guest this evening. Courtney Bonneau, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. If we may, let's start with Cana, which yet again has been the subject of an Israeli massacre. The fact that Jesus performed his first miracle there, and I've been in the cave where it happened, the fact that most of the victims are women and children, neither of those facts deterred Israel in any way from returning to the scene of former massacres. What can you tell us about it?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. And yes, they did commit a massacre in Cana today, but the Israelis don't seem to think anything about massacring women and children. They systematically target children, so I'm not surprised by this at all. This is what I have witnessed in the last 18 months.
Tell us about the last 18 months for you, and tell us why you were there. How did you find yourself there in Lebanon?
I was there doing a project anyway, and then the war broke out, and I started covering it. I was doing strictly photography at first, and during the ceasefire period, I started doing videos because I was being threatened. I was shot at multiple times by the Israeli army, so I started making videos for my own safety. And to have a record of what I was doing for when they actually do shoot me. So I didn't go into it intentionally thinking, oh, I'm gonna do correspondence from the field. I was doing it to protect myself while I was doing photography, while I was doing a project on the construction and expansion of their illegal occupation bases in South Lebanon. So that's how I ended up starting to do that. I also noticed that none of the the large foreign media outlets were on the border. I was down there with only Lebanese media outlets like Al Manar, Al Akhbar, and Al Mayadeen. And I wanted people
And
to know what was
your
going on. I noticed my colleagues in Beirut, they weren't really reporting what was happening on the ground. People weren't getting accurate information. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it. I'm here anyway. So why not? Why not do this?
and your American passport didn't help you in any way? I mean, it hasn't helped others in the occupied
No,
territories, but I'm sure you informed your embassy that you were there and what you were doing, and sought their protection, didn't you?
no, no. I never contacted the American embassy. I'm a Dutch American dual citizen. So the Dutch embassy knows I'm there, but they also can't really do anything. They can't provide any kind of protection against what we are up against as journalists in the South. I'm sure you know that almost
Well,
30 of my colleagues have been murdered.
I do. I mean, yeah, of course, hundreds in Palestine and Lebanon, many hundreds now, must be climbing towards 400s. I was recalling, and someone put up a video earlier of an earlier Cana massacre when I questioned then Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine in Parliament. This has been going on for all of my adult life, which has been rather a long one. But I haven't actually witnessed their occupation of late. So help me compare it. In the past, they basically controlled all of South Lebanon, right up to the Litani River. They set up bogus governance. They built a collaborator army called the South Lebanon People's Liberation Army, SPLA, I think it was called, most of whom are now working in grocery stores in Israel itself now. It's been occupied, liberated, occupied, liberated. What's their latest effort to re-establish an occupation and settlement even of Jewish settlers in Lebanese territory?
So they established 5 points, 5 large military occupation bases in South Lebanon. They have a couple of smaller ones as well in the town of Kfar Kela, where they do conduct military operations, but they're a lot smaller. So they conduct terrorist attacks from these occupation sites on a daily basis. This is what the last 18 months has been like. Previous to the war starting up again, I've been living in South Lebanon for 18 months, and every day it's a fresh hell. Like during the ceasefire period, we saw daily assassinations, airstrikes, drone strikes, the killing of men, women, and children. I can't even tell you how many children's funerals that I've been to, how much footage I have of dead children from their funerals, or even from the scene of where they were killed. A lot of villages on the border have been razed to the ground. So, a lot of people couldn't go back. But the ones who did live under occupation. I live under occupation. They terrorize the residents that went back to their homes on a daily basis. That's what it has been like. And they murder
How many people have gone
medics.
back? Yeah, of course, they love killing ambulance drivers and first aid personnel in particular. How many people have gone back? I mean, looking at the lines of traffic headed for Beirut, it looked like the south of Lebanon had become a ghost town, but you say people actually have gone back.
People had gone back after the last war. People had gone back to several border villages, ones where there were homes still standing. But, you know, they've all been displaced again. There's like 1.2 million people displaced now because of this war. I don't have the figures on how many people were actually able to go back, but a lot of the towns along the southern belt, there was literally nothing to go back to. And, you know, this is the occupation part. The people who did try to go back, the people who did try to rebuild something, you know, they've paid with their lives, or, you know, they were terrorized every single day. Something that they had construction would then be like blown up. You know, they would come in, rig it with C4 and detonate it. So yeah, that's what it has been like.
And when you say you're living under occupation, are the Israelis literally walking around?
In those 5 points, yes, they're on Lebanese land. They are in Lebanon, and occasionally they will come in on foot, or they come in on ATVs to commit murder, to you know, do home demolitions. I watched them during the ceasefire in the town of Yarun for 2 weeks, rig entire neighborhoods with C4. I filmed them doing it and then detonating the whole neighborhood over a period of about 14 days. So yeah, they were walking around. Yeah.
And what's the intensity of the resistance to them? One gathers, including from Israeli sources, that they're having a tough time quelling the Lebanese resistance that they were told was more or less a busted flush.
Yeah. I don't know what busted flush means. Yeah.
Well, it means hopeless, useless, no longer a factor.
Oh,
but that's turned out to be very far from the case.
That is patently false. Yeah. So the resistance they've reverted back to their like guerrilla warfare style roots. And when I read Israeli reports, it's clear to me that they've been blindsided by this, absolutely blindsided. Even today in Bint Jbeil, the resistance blew up a tank, and Israeli media was reporting that the soldier in the tank was killed. I've been filming clashes for weeks. You know, the resistance are still fighting in border towns. This is evident. And, you know, Hezbollah has one of the best guerrilla armies in the world. It's very well documented. So I think, yeah, the Israelis indeed have been blindsided by this.
Well, our editor, Ron Mackay, and I were witnesses to fighting in Bint Jbeil in 1977. That's how long we've been on this case. Courtney, how can people follow your work and support you?
They can follow me on Twitter at Courtney Bonneau Photography, and also on Instagram, Courtney Bonneau Photography. And yeah, please follow if you want to get on the ground news from South Lebanon.
I'm sure everyone watching will be right now doing that. Courtney Bonneau, freelance photojournalist, war correspondent, and a very brave woman. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break.
Thank you, George.
And it's your calls right up to the end. Stay tuned. There's a legend on the line in Oklahoma. It's May on Trump. Welcome back, May.
Trump is using a magic 8-ball to make his decision. He apparently has completely lost whatever mind he had to begin with. This is just ridiculous. Does he really think anyone's going to believe that? I'm here to say, and I'm here to join you and everybody else, the emperor has no clothes on. He's as naked as they come. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he got naked with some young people. And that is why he so desperately is trying to kill this whole Epstein thing. And he's just making it worse.
I'm wondering when Donald Trump knew that he was implicated in these Epstein files and what it was that he knew? That's the big question, because he wouldn't have been banging the Epstein drum all this time and then suddenly to pull the rug. That tells me that it was a late decision, that someone came late to Trump to say, you know, you really don't want to be doing that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is Melania Trump lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Next week, is the Pope a Catholic? The week after, do bears defecate in the woods? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, or on patreon.com/George Galloway, if you are indeed amongst the vanguard. And actually, there's a very healthy yes majority in the poll so far. So the main interest is in the quantum. It's climbing to 45,000. So get your votes in. I'll close it about 15 minutes before the end of the show. Is Melania Trump lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Let's go to Jay in Dumfries and Galloway, my own home territory. Jay, welcome.
Hello, thanks. Nice to talk to you.
And you, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Trump is going to blockade the straits, and he's going to stop boats that are already taking fuel after paying a toll, and he's going to blow them away in the open sea. I'd like to see him try and do that to Indian and Chinese tankers, because I mean, it's all a bluff. Everything. America hasn't got a leg to stand on, and this so-called ceasefire. I mean, what a fake situation. One day, they gave it one day, and then they went there with a set of terms, which if Iran did not agree with, well, you know, then Iran is at fault. I mean, what rubbish. And I just wish people would see America for what it is. They persecuted the Iranians for 47 odd years just because of the fact that the Iranians took hostages at one time. Iran is a peaceful country. I've been there, and I've been to several of their neighbors. They're the nicest people in the world, and they're really peaceful. They enjoy it. You know, they don't want to have a nuclear deterrent. They'd rather just use nuclear power for their own energy needs. There's nothing to do with nuclear arms. This is all Israel in an attempt to create a greater Israel, and it knows that without Iran there, it can succeed. This is what it's all about.
Indeed it is, and you can see it with crystal clarity. More and more people can. So you're left wondering, why is Donald Trump doing this? It's not for votes. He can't run again. He hates his vice president, quite plainly. If he had any thoughts of a Trump dynasty, even he must know that that is dead now. He's facing certain, I'd say, impeachment after November. By December, January, he'll have been impeached at least twice. And if the results are bad enough in November, there could be a 2/3 majority to remove him from office, 2/3 majority in the Senate to remove him. So why do you think he's doing it, Jay?
Either it's his ego or he's been blackmailed by Netanyahu. And I suspect it's the latter. His ego is bad enough. Everyone knows what he's like. He can't take no for an answer. But I think there's more to this than meets the eye. I mean, and also I think he's also going mad. I mean, some of the way his behavior over the last 3 weeks, I think personally he's also losing it.
Yeah, you and me both. Jay, words of wisdom from my own home territory of Dumfries and Galloway. Thanks for joining us. You can leave comments, by the way, on YouTube. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Scan the QR code now, leave your comment, and I'll try and read it out. Rosa sends $10. Thank you, Rosa. That's definitely a way to my heart. If Donald Trump chooses to use a nuke against Iran, does he have to consult Congress? Well, these are all debatable points. Everything he's done so far, most scholars would tell you, he had to have congressional approval for it. Although it's a little bit academic, because if he had consulted Congress, then he would have got the agreement of Congress. Perhaps he has nothing but contempt for the Congress. On that, he and I would agree. And Lourdes Lopez, 2541, says, what good is Elon Musk's supposed intelligence and money if he blocks anyone who disagrees with him? It is astonishing. It's only a poll, for God's sake. Elon? Why? And we used to get thousands and thousands of votes on X on our polls. And now we struggle to get 500. It's so obvious, so petty, so ridiculous. Why are you doing it? And Tim Joe, 8837, says the fact that Elon Musk blocks your poll on Melania but promotes a post funding the kidnapping of Professor Said Marandi speaks volumes where his allegiances lie. Indeed so. Hoddy83 says Melania is not in the Epstein files. She was on the menu. Oh my God, what an image that conjures up. Amar is in California on Trump and Melania. Go ahead, Amar.
Thank you so much, George. It is a pleasure to be with the great, eloquent George Galloway on his beautiful show that serves every region in the world. I'd like to say Trump thought just because he grabbed Venezuela by the you-know-what, he tried to do the same with Iran, but he found that Iran is full of men, not like Venezuela. They will not sell their country. For the White House, it seems that they only want to speak about the hostage crisis from Iran back in the day, but they refuse to address the current hostage crisis in the White House, which might be Melania, and for sure, Trump, it's possible.
That's a very good point. Her statement the other day, which blindsided Trump, blindsided White House officials, it looked to me a bit like a hostage video, but it also looked to me like a hostage that would get out the window if she can. And that window may be opening up now with various attendant scandals involving a member of Trump's administration. Are people still talking about the Epstein affair in California? We've lost Amar, unfortunately, or you've lost me. Okay, so there's the poll. Is Melania Trump lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? A big shout out to some of tonight's biggest donors who've been backing Moats via the website, moats.tv. L. Finlay, Michael Silva, Johnny Comerford, David Mitchell, and Christopher Webb. A big thanks to all of you and all of you who I know are going to follow suit over the next few hours. If you'd like to support the program, go to moats.tv and press the Donate Now button. Let's go to Manchester, scene of my team's glory tomorrow night. Farhad in Manchester on Iran. Farhad, welcome.
Hello, sir. How are you?
By the grace of God, good. What do you want to say, sir?
Okay, thank you. One thing, so about these negotiations that apparently ended up without any results, and as soon as J.D. Vance returned back to America, he rose up. He raised up again the issue of nuclears. But all people, I assume all people right now, they know that Iran is saying hundreds of times that we all know that they said, like, we want nuclear program as a legitimate and peaceful program, because we all know that oil and gas gonna finish in future. And also not only for energy and electricity, we need nuclear program for medicine, for vaccines and cancer issues and all the studies about that. And the Israelis, that they just killing the Iranian scientists and bombing the universities, over 20 universities, or that vaccine place in Tehran that is over 100 years old age, like even back the revolution happened. And the other thing I wanted to bring it up is the missile program. You know, we all know that it is only deterrence and defensive. Iran never attacked any country before. Only this time when Supreme Leader said, if they attack us, we're going to make it painful for everybody. So that would be a leverage, and this war going to end soon, because if we don't have a leverage, they will just bomb us and kill us and nobody say anything. And I have a question from you, George, and I finish my speak. Where are we going? Like these Israelis that they are arresting and capturing people, a lot of people. Like how much capacity the prisons have? What are they doing with the people? Like what kind of human rights?
Are you talking about the British government or the Israeli? No, I'm only joking, but the vast majority of vast majority of Israelis support Netanyahu, or wish that he would be even more savage and bloody. So although the people who are being arrested in Israel could scarcely be more brave, they are exceedingly few in number. A better question is where the British are going to put all these terrorists that they keep arresting every Saturday for holding up a piece of paper. Look, Farhad, we're dealing with an American president who doesn't even know who the leader of Iran is or was. In his Truth Social this evening, the one that the whole world is now discussing, he calls the supreme leader that he murdered Khomeini. He doesn't know the difference between Khomeini and Khamenei. He thinks that a man that died in 1978, who died in 1988, was not the man that he killed in 2026. We're talking about a big palooka here, a big, stupid palooka, an idiot, that if he wasn't president of the United States, people would be laughing at him. They would be laughing at him in the streets as he struts and gyrates to YMCA, the International LGBTQ plus anthem. Now look, you can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen. Now, huge news this week. Tonight, our podcast is in the top 10 for politics in Peru, Greece, Bahrain, and Liberia, and also ranks in the top 30 for politics in Russia, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. How's that? Will in Falkirk in Scotland wants to talk about Candace, Tucker, and Trump. On you go, Will.
How you doing?
All good, sir. What would you like to say? I see the Rangers beat you 6-3.
Oh, I'm not a football fan. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm a paranormal investigator. I've been full-time, morning till night, every day for 6 years, trying to get this information to people like yourself or Neil Oliver or Candace or anyone. I've got some of the most incredible news and facts to tell you that you've had in 6 years, but it's also terrifying. Currently, I'm focused on with the meltdown that Donald Trump had over Candace and Tucker and Alex and Meghan. Now, there's something they all have in common. All of them have been talking about demonic spells, witchcraft, antichrist spirits, and what's wrong with Donald Trump. I have been talking about this stuff for 6 years when I started reporting on COVID, and I asked, why did the planet go sort of tribal divided and forget, why did jabs not stop transmission? Why doesn't the jab stay in the arm? What kind of immune response will you get? Is ivermectin just for horses? Something supernatural has happened to the planet, and I'm the one guy who's been studying and proving it the whole time. I'm trying to get hold of people like you.
Well, we're very lucky
and Neil.
that you chose to. We're very lucky you chose to impart all of that to us. Although it's a bit beyond the purview of the discussion this evening. If you are a paranormal investigator, I'm amazed that you didn't care about the Rangers score. Thanks, Will, in Falkirk. Chris in Berkshire wants to talk about Palestine and Lebanon. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, hi, George. I just want to talk about the media bias regarding the Palestine and Lebanon. I was reading the article written by our ex-Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who really should be tried for war crimes regarding Islamists taking over the UK, when the actual truth, and there's ample evidence of that truth, is that it's the Zionists that have taken over the media and the Western politics. They are embedded with the politicians in our country as well as Europe and North America. I would say they actually support the person on one side, Netanyahu, who's being charged with corruption in his own country, who has been charged with genocide. You can't get a bigger charge than genocide by international courts. And on the other hand, you have a corrupt guy, Donald Trump, who is convicted criminal who was charged with 34 counts of fraud, who cheated on his wife, who wants to date his daughter, and he a rapist, basically. And that's who they back. That's who they believe. And I'm quite astonished that they're getting away with it.
Well, I hope you're going to do something about it on election day next month, because there's no point in harboring all these noble complaints, and I agree with every one of them, if you vote or allow others to vote in the same old, same old. Keir Starmer is up to his neck in blood. Not just actually now the blood of the people in Gaza, but the blood of the people in the West Bank, the blood of the people in Syria, the blood of the people in Lebanon, the blood of the people in Iran. He's literally up to his neck in it. And yet he is pretending that we are not a part of Trump's war against Iran. Well, except for sending our warship until it broke down again to the Persian Gulf, apart from allowing our land to be used for B-52 and other bombers, including nuclear-capable bombers, of taking off from our country, from bases that are laughably called Royal Air Force bases. But of course the King is not much saluted there. These are American Trojan horses. And we have allowed from the beginning of the war Donald Trump to use them to murder schoolgirls and women and to threaten to destroy completely a 5,000-year-old civilization. So I suppose my point is, Chris, many British people feel the way you do, and I do, but it's time to do something about it. It's time to get on the streets, and it's definitely time to get into the polling station and cast your vote to cast them out. Let me go to California, who wouldn't, where Dawood wants to talk about the ceasefire. Dawood, welcome.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Hi. I'm glad that tonight this call connected, and I just want to talk about the peace deal that failed. That's it once again reminds us how fragile peace can be and how costly failure it is when it comes to peace talks, right? The recent collapse of the peace deal is, not just a political setback. I guess it's a human setback, because every time a peace agreement fails, it is not the leaders sitting at the negotiation table who suffer the most. It is the ordinary people, right? It is the families who continue to live in uncertainty. Youth who grow up without stability, and communities that remain trapped in cycles of fear, mistrust, and lost opportunities. So we need to ask ourselves, why do these deals keep failing? Is it
well, we've lost Dawood, so let me deal with the point that he just made there. Well, it doesn't help when your Secretary of State, your Foreign Secretary, is at an MMA fight with Donald Trump in Florida, rather than at the negotiating table on the attempt to avoid World War III. One would have thought that he could have been better employed there rather than at the UFC. It would help if you didn't send a shady real estate agent called Witkoff and your son-in-law, who used to share his bed with Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not implying that they were both in the bed at the same time, but his bed used to be given over to Benjamin Netanyahu when Netanyahu was even more of a grasping obtainer of hospitality and good things than he subsequently became. So it doesn't help when you send J.D. Vance, who you are determined should fail because you want rid of him and you have no intention of supporting him for president when you demit office. It doesn't help that the best negotiators, the best diplomats in the United States are completely bypassed. But that's not the reason that they failed. The reason that they failed was that the US never intended that they should succeed. The US intended for the war to continue. And it's the question why that is the one that is grabbing my attention, and that I will discuss with the one and only Scott Ritter right after this break. But first, Brian in Boston asks the question on all our lips: how can America be so stupid? Welcome, Brian. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, George. I do appreciate all you have to say. And the question is for Mr. Ritter when you do bring him on. A lot has been said about all these missiles that we're throwing off, these Tomahawks and whatnot, that are going to need to be replenished. I know we're doing it quite slowly compared to the Chinese. But aren't we going to be dependent on the Chinese and their rare earth minerals to make any of these things? Never mind the rest of our technology that is dependent on the Chinese. Why why are we pissing off everybody? And the second question I had to do with why America has been so asleep in terms of the change in the nature of war. War is fought radically differently, as we've seen in the Ukraine with drone warfare. I think the 36,000 deaths last month, and they attributed 94% of them to drones. Has the U.S. kept up, or why haven't we kept up with our technology in drone warfare? And
that's a very good question. Maybe we'll get an answer from Scott, but my gut would tell me that there's not enough profit in drones. The big profit for the military-industrial complex is in the absurdly complicated big ticket items rather than the $35,000 drone. And the advance that the Iranians made in drone technology without anyone paying any attention took place while we were building aircraft carriers, including my country, not just yours. And if ever a weapon looked obsolete now, it is the aircraft carrier, which is why they can't be brought anywhere near the theater. And when they do, they develop mysterious laundry fires and develop towels and T-shirts down the toilet cistern. I'll ask Scott that very question. Thanks for asking it, Brian in Boston. Let me take a quick break. Then it is the one and only Scott Ritter. You definitely don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have. And I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
The Trump bump doesn't have quite the same ring as it did when that sting was made. Is Melania Trump lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? You've got about 40 minutes still to vote on that poll on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, the YouTube stream, and on patreon.com/George Galloway. Scott Ritter is the man for this kind of time, where it is vital to understand military matters and their crossover with political matters, which is more or less all the time now. Scott Ritter, a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, a former arms inspector with the United Nations, and a man that I have been following for a very long time, as many sensible people are now all over the world. Scott, thanks for joining us at this auspicious moment. Let's start at the beginning, or the restart. Were you surprised at the failure of the talks in Islamabad?
No. I mean, first of all, the talks aren't over. This is a process, and I'm not surprised that the United States came in crudely, rudely, lewdly, ill-prepared, and, pulled a stunt. When you hear about what the Iranians did, how well prepared they were, how they had, technical papers, talking points, they were ready to work with the United States to come up with a solution to every problem. The United States was not. This is typical Donald Trump. Show up, bluster, pound the table, walk away, as if this is a New York State, a New York City real estate deal, and those people are going to be desperately calling you back, trying to, lower the fee. The Iranians aren't playing that game, of course, but even as J.D. Vance left and the senior Iranians left, the both sides left technical teams behind who were working on technical details. So the talks are very much ongoing. And until which time we see missiles flying and bombers flying, the ceasefire will hold. It's a 2-week ceasefire. The ceasefire has not been terminated. And so this is a process. This is theater, the theater of the absurd. It's a very dangerous game because it can spin out of control at any minute. I think Donald Trump, once again, is just, being foolish. He really doesn't have the cards to be playing, this kind of high stakes poker. But, that's who he is. And I think the Iranians know who he is, and they haven't budged. They know where they can go. They know what they want to accomplish. The thing is, the United States has no clue what it wants to accomplish because we haven't even taken the time to get into the details. When the president says he wants a hard commitment from the Iranians not to produce a nuclear bomb, he already has it. He killed the man who put the fatwa on the table. I mean, what an idiot this person is. And the Iranians have not reversed that fatwa. And indeed, had he sent some true experts, not Jared Kushner, not Witkoff, and certainly not J.D. Vance, at least not J.D. Vance unless he's backed up with genuine thinking people, we could have sat down with the Iranians and shut the door on any potential of Iran ever producing a nuclear weapon. This is the easiest deal in the world to make, but we're not there to make that deal. We're here to create the impression that the United States is in charge, that the United States won this war, because this is what it's all about, George. This is about Donald Trump's political legacy. This is about Donald Trump continuing to cement the notion that he's a winner, that everything's the hottest that's ever been. Because if we deal with the actual facts, Donald Trump's one of the biggest losers ever to walk the face of the earth. This is a humiliation that's taken place for the United States. The greatest military power in the world could not bring to their knees the nation of Iran. Now, we all know why that is, and the Iranians have a lot to be proud of. But, you don't walk around claiming to be the best of the best. You can talk the talk, but unless you can walk the walk, you better not talk the talk. And Donald Trump better learn to keep his mouth shut, because what Iran has done to the United States and Israel is to humiliate them badly.
Well, if there was any issue that could have been more easily solved than this issue of the nuclear bomb, it was the Straits of Hormuz, which I keep reminding everyone were never blocked until Donald Trump launched a war which got them blocked. Now we've got a proposal for a blockade of the blockade, which is blockading a strait that was never blockaded before. That really is the theater of the absurd. How's that going to work, Scott?
Well, I don't know if it will work at all, because first of all, a blockade is an act of war. So if you're in the middle of a ceasefire and you decide to commit a blockade, it's the same as launching a bombing raid on Iran. It's an act of war, so it's the end of the ceasefire. Second of all, the last time I checked, there are Chinese and Russian tankers that transit. I don't know if Donald Trump's really ready to have that kind of fight with the Chinese and the Russians right now. Again, this is man whose mouth just goes. They really need to remove him from all ability to access social media They need to put Sebastian Gorka in jail. They need to put Stephen Miller in jail. They need to get responsible people around him so that when he communicates on policy issues, it's done only after, he has, consulted with experts and they have hammered out a consensus statement. Donald Trump's the worst thing that's happened to American foreign policy, American national security policy, because he gets so far ahead of the game that he's just living in never land. We aren't in a position to launch a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. We would be declaring war on the world. I mean, he does understand that Kuwaiti oil flows through there. United Arab Emirates oil flows. Saudi oil flows through there. Bahraini oil, Qatar. I mean, what kind of brain dead moron is this president to think that simply by saying something it is so. The Iranian Navy, by the way, I want to remind everybody that the Navy is alive and well and living, not only mined certain channels in the Strait of Hormuz after Pete Hegseth said they no longer exist, but the last time I checked, it was the Iranian Navy on the radio with 2 American destroyers telling them that if you don't turn around, we will sink you. This is the Iranian Navy that's destroyed, doesn't exist. They control the Strait of Hormuz. And the other thing is, where is this blockade going to take place? Because you're not going to be bringing your ships close to the strait. You'll lose all your ships that way. So this blockade, is going to retreat into the Indian Ocean, into open seas, international waterways, and you're going to run a blockade there. Good luck, Donald Trump. I mean, at some point in time, even Pete Hegseth has to turn to him and say, Mr. President, you're dumber than dirt.
I wouldn't count on it, but the president who said all this was last night at a UFC fight, MMA fight in Florida, where he was roundly booed, by the way. But with him was your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Isn't he nominally in charge of foreign affairs?
Nominally. That is the appropriate word, nominally. He is selectively in charge of those things that he has been given permission to get involved in. I mean, this has to be, I'm not a big Marco Rubio fan, but, he is the Secretary of State, so he has a portfolio. But when you're the Secretary of State with the malignant narcissist named Donald Trump, you have no portfolio. All portfolios belong to Donald Trump, and you only get the tidbits that he throws out at you. But in this case, I think Marco Rubio might be grateful that he's at the MMA and not being thrown away to the wolves like J.D. Vance is. It'd be one thing if you sent a negotiator who could actually close a deal. George, I'm here to tell you, I'm not the greatest diplomat that ever walked the face of the earth. I could have closed a deal last night that would have been a win for the United States, an absolute victory for Donald Trump. He could have walked away with the reputation of being a deal maker, a peacemaker, and all that. The Iranians are not impossible to work with. They are looking for a deal. They know what they're, when they say they're red lines, remember, these red lines are very broad brushed red lines. These aren't, narrow strands of titanium. These are concepts that, there's a lot of maneuver room in there if you actually know what you're doing. But here's the other thing, too. Marco Rubio is the head of a department that he himself has gutted. The State Department today is a shadow of its former self. He is a Secretary of State, but he doesn't have the team that we need to be doing this. There used to be a day and age when we had a phone book in the State Department and every phone number had an expert, an honest-to-God expert on the other end. You could pick them up and get answers. They could form teams. They could form agency working groups, interagency working groups. They could come up with ideas, concepts. That's gone. Right now, all you have is Donald Trump's gut feeling. And I don't want to say too much about his gut, but any feeling that comes out of it isn't something I want to be particularly enamored of.
You don't want to be downwind of it. That is for sure, according to eyewitnesses or nose witnesses these days. But that was really my point, Scott. Wasn't this deliberate suicide mission on which J.D. Vance was sent? When I saw the pictures from the MMA last night in Florida, it looked pretty clear to me that Trump is anointing Rubio and ditching Vance. And thus Vance was sent on a mission that he was designed to fail.
100%. I mean, J.D. Vance made a mistake of, speaking out behind closed doors. He's been a loyal vice president. We have to give him all the credit in the world. Publicly, he's been supportive of this president, but it is clear that J.D. Vance did not support this war. And now it's been clear that J.D. Vance has been shown to have been largely correct. And you can't be correct in Donald Trump's circle. He's not somebody who appreciates you being right, him being wrong. And so what Donald Trump is now doing is destroying the J.D. Vance brand. And it's a shame that America is witnessing, one of the most critical national security moments in modern history. Literally, George, this is what I call an empire-terminating event. The consequences of the failure of the United States and Iran go well beyond the Middle East region. They go into Europe. They go into Asia. This is, it has accelerated the collapse of the empire, across the board. And, Donald Trump right now is a man who has sacrificed the reputation of the country for his branding, the Trump branding. And branding is just all about, selling himself as the greatest, the best, the everything. To have J.D. Vance there, it's like having somebody saying, I was right, he was wrong. Nobody's allowed to say that around Donald Trump. Only Donald Trump's allowed to be right. So now Donald Trump is about to make J.D. Vance wrong. He's going to say, J.D. Vance couldn't close the deal, but now I'm going to send somebody in. Like I said, we have 2 weeks, and I do believe there will be a deal because Donald Trump doesn't have any options. I heard one of your callers talk about, we're reloading. What missiles are we reloading? We haven't built them yet. The same deficiency in stocks that we had when the ceasefire began exists today. There's been no change in that reality. Just because we had a couple days where bombs aren't falling doesn't mean that American shipping suddenly has a magic aura thrust about it that makes them invincible to Iranian missiles. We cannot project power into the region. It's over. We lost this war. There's nothing that can happen that changes that calculus. Iran still has its missiles. Moreover, they're reconstituting even more missiles. They're getting stronger, whereas the United States is simply treading water. Donald Trump knows this. If this war resumes, it'll resume with a vengeance that'll punish Israel even harsher and the United States and their Gulf Arab allies even more. The Gulf Arab states are in a panic right now, an absolute panic, because they now know that the United States cannot protect them. And they also know that Donald Trump's words especially can't protect them. And so this next 2 weeks, you're going to see by the end, in my opinion, by the end of this negotiating period, Donald Trump's going to make a deal, but it's going to be a deal that makes Donald Trump the winner, J.D. Vance the loser. I don't think he's going to be promoting little Marco too much. He's just, Marco's just a tool. Everybody needs to understand that Donald Trump will throw everybody under the bus. There is nobody who's safe when it comes to Donald Trump and his ego. He will not allow anybody to outshine him. And so that's where we're at right now. He is desperate to come out of this a winner, moving into the summer political season right before the November midterm elections, trying to win over an American public that has lost lost confidence in this man. This con man can no longer con. And so this is a game that we're playing. I think people spend far too much time looking at the nuances of actual diplomacy without understanding that the only diplomatic maneuvering taking place is within Donald Trump's inner circle as he seeks to cancel those people who have more credibility than him because they actually stood up and opposed the war.
And yet the same man that can't beat Iran, didn't and can't, threatened China this morning. He said, when told that China was resupplying the Iranians with anti-aircraft munitions and so on, he became very animated and said, China's going to be in big trouble if they supply the Iranians. And this with a visit to Beijing, outstanding, the one that he had to cancel the last time he insulted China. There is an air of unreality about him. I'm wondering if you think, like me, that he's really losing his marbles.
I've never been impressed with the intellectual capacity of Donald Trump. I've always given him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to, New York City criminality. I mean, most most mafia, made men are somewhat, clever. They understand the streets, but they can't function in real life because in real life, you've got to do more than just bully people. You actually have to think your way out of a problem. You have to have actual genuine expertise. Donald Trump has expertise in nothing, zero, squat. And, and so here we have a situation where he has not even bothered to surround himself. It's okay. To be a charismatic leader, to surround yourself with good people and have the, wherewithal to sit back and go, all right, talk to me about this. Okay, thanks, boom. And then go out there and broad brush do what the guy just told you to do. But Donald Trump doesn't operate that way. He's all about himself. And so what looks like diminished mental capacity is just the reality that Donald Trump's dumber than dirt. He's not a very bright man. He's a pretty stupid man when it comes to the world we live in. He says the same things over and over again. I don't know how many times I have to hear that he's a good friend of Xi Jinping. He's my good friend. I think Xi Jinping despises Donald Trump. I think Xi Jinping has no use for him, but Donald Trump is the president of the United States. So Xi Jinping has to, give that status some notice. But, when I talk about empire terminating events, something happened earlier this week. I don't think many Americans picked up on it, but the head of the Kuomintang, Taiwan's main opposition party that controls the parliament, flew to China and met with Xi Jinping. And there's talk about Xi Jinping coming to Taiwan. Guys, it's over. Game, set, match. China won. We can't take the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that, that we can secure the Straits of Malacca in Indonesia? The answer is no. Do you think that we can now compel the Chinese to give up their island bases in the South China Sea? The answer is no. China controls the major sea lines of communication that connect Japan and South Korea and Taiwan with the rest of the world. And the United States has proved that we no longer have the military capacity to keep these sea lanes open. The National Security Strategy of the United States, November last year, said that we are seeking conventional military overmatch with the Chinese so that when we sit down with the Chinese, they pee their pants in fear because we're so much better than they are. And we have lost that. We are now the pathetic, losers of the world. Because if you think the Iranian missiles are good, you haven't seen anything yet. The Chinese have missiles that are specifically designed to take out American aircraft carriers and all this. It's over, and Donald Trump can't handle it. This is what happens when a man with diminished mental capacity, zero intellectual capability, is confronted with overwhelmingly difficult problems. He needs to shut up and start bringing in experts who guide him through this process, or otherwise we're going to dig ourselves into such a deep hole. One of your callers called in and talked about, how do we even begin reconstituting some of our more advanced technologies, because the supply chain all goes back to China in rare earth minerals. Gosh, what do they call them? Something magnets. It's a special term for magnets, but the magnets that are used in these weapon systems, these processes, China can just shut us down anytime they want to right now. We hold no cards. The only card we hold is nuclear weapons, and we don't even hold that card anymore.
One last segue then, Scott. I'm in Moscow right now. What does all this mean for the NATO-Russia war? The United States seems to have stopped talking about it. The Europeans are not talking about it nearly as much as they were and in the last couple of 4 years. The partisanship that you used to see on social media, the symbols, the memes, all of that, the NAFO, you remember them, were always salivating, barking dogs after people like you and me. Is it over, the Ukraine war? And how will it be brought to an end?
Well, obviously there's a lot of fighting going on. The Ukrainian army is a very big army. That's what people need to understand. And even though we're not actively resupplying it, it has, enough meat on the bones to keep fighting for some time now. But it's like, the American Civil War, Lee versus Grant. The Confederate Army was a good army. They had quality troops. They go into a battle. The Ukrainians aren't beating the Russians, so that's the thing. But, the Confederates used to go in and fight the Union to a standstill. But at the end of the day, they had to withdraw, not because they beat the Union, but because they lost too many men. They had to withdraw. And the Union just kept reinforcing. Russia's, not losing that many men. The Ukrainians are getting slaughtered. But the thing is that the Russians are winning each one of these battles. Yes, there's the isolated counterattack here and there, but the Russians are dominating this battle. And this battle, again, one of your callers talked about drone warfare. I will be doing a major project on drone warfare in the coming months, where hopefully I'll be able to answer many of these questions with specifics, firsthand experience. But just doing the research of this project, the war that's being fought on the ground, in Ukraine between the Ukrainians and Russians is unlike any war that's ever been imagined by anybody in NATO. The NATO and the United States, none of them know how to fight this war. They would be slaughtered in an instant by the reality of this war. And this war, as you rightly pointed out, is not one that's conducive to being mastered by, capitalist-driven military industrial complex where money is everything. The drone innovations that are take place on the front lines with the privates, the sergeants, the sub-lieutenants who every day are flying these missions, watching the enemy react and making the adjustments there on the front. They don't have to send it back to Washington, D.C. to get permission. They're doing it right there. The innovation's happening. They capture it while they're fighting. They send the innovation back to be looked at by a panel of people who then seek to adapt that and get it down. The ability of the Russians to respond almost instantaneously to battlefield innovations and advances. The Ukrainians are doing the same thing. This is a fascinating, dangerous war because the moment you achieve drone dominance, the battlefield breaks down in support of the enemy. Everything breaks down. And so it's always this battle between, who can get dominance, can the other side then return parity, maybe push you back. It's drones that are driving every aspect of this war, and we're not there. We don't know how to do it. We don't understand how to do it. We don't understand how do you break, centuries of, legacy dominance by infantry and armor, and artillery. Those are the big three. And suddenly there's these geeky little drone operators come in and go, yeah, we're sort of the top dogs right now. We're the ones that drive this boat. Everything works for us. Everything's centered around us. The Russians have gone ahead and they've created their own drone branch. And so, now a drone operator is a standalone like the infantry, and it's becoming a dominating aspect of this war. A lot of resources are going into this. In the United States, we're not doing that. NATO's not doing that. It's the end of NATO, George. I mean, the United States isn't just not talking about what's going on with Ukraine. We're talking about pulling out 100,000 troops from Europe. We're talking about selective support for nations. Article 5 is about collective self-defense. But when the United States says, Italy, you didn't send any ships, Spain, you didn't send any ships, Germany, you didn't send any ships, we're not going to support you. It's the end of NATO. It's part of the empire terminating event, all linked back to the American failure in Iran.
As somebody we both know and who's in a position to know, told me that the Ukraine war and the development of drone capacities therein is the most significant development in warfare since the invention of dynamite. Is that hyperbole, or do you recognize that?
No, it's 100%. If you haven't mastered let's put it this way. If you don't have tanks, you can still win on the battlefield. It's nice to have tanks. Tanks provide nice supporting arms. There's a utility for them. But you can still prevail on the battlefield without tanks. If you don't have drones, you will not prevail. You will not win. You will lose. There's no doubt about it. Drones are the single most important weapon system on the battlefield today.
Finally, I know it's not your area of expertise, and neither of us are the kind of fellow who enjoys attacking somebody else's wife. We have adversaries. No need to bring their wife into it. But Melania's looking a bit of a shaky vessel on the Epstein front these days. I wonder if you had any insight on that.
George, I try to stay as far away from that stinking pile of. Look, let's get serious for a second. America has an Epstein problem, and the world has an Epstein problem. What the Epstein files represent is the absolute, not just dysfunction, but rotten to the core. We are talking about America rotting from inside, the power elites and what was being done and what was being tolerated and who was doing it and how it was normalized. I mean, that's the thing about it, is how this was normalized. Even the mafia, when they had a hitman, nobody wanted to hang around the hitman because he was just a bad guy. But here, everybody wants to hang around Epstein. Everybody wants to be with Epstein and Maxine and all this stuff. And they normalized some of the worst criminal behavior imaginable. And that's where Melania is. She normalized a relationship that she's now trying to walk away from, but you can't. And I think Melania and Donald Trump, I'm not accusing Melania of directly participating in anything, but I can say this: she had to have known what Donald Trump was doing, what Epstein was doing, and she normalized it. She made it appear as if she can have normal interaction with these people, and you can't. But that is part of the rot. And so she brought it on herself. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if she hadn't come out and thrust the spotlight on herself. But now that she's opted in to that, we have every obligation now to reflect on this. And it's, I think that she will go down in history as an enabler. Maybe that's not a criminal act, but it's an act that should define her in the eyes of society as one of the worst kinds of human beings. She, was this elite, rich, empowered, entitled person who lived a lifestyle that was built on the backs of these girls who were being sexually exploited by the people she hung out with. And I'm sorry, Melania, you brought it on yourself, but there it is.
Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps intelligence officer and arms inspector and campaigner of the need for wars to be just and sane. And we're now dealing with a world with very few of those. Thanks very much for joining us, Scott Ritter. As always, let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls right up until Gayatri. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Vischer says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well over 50,000 of you think in overwhelming numbers that Melania is lying about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go to Oregon, where Jordan wants to talk about hateful propaganda that divides us. On you go, Jordan. I'm all ears.
Hey, George. How are you today?
By the grace of God, good. Thanks. What would you like to say?
I would like to say I was born in Bosnia, but I live in America for about 30 years. I went through the war in Bosnia. I was soldier for 3 years, been wounded 3 times. I came from the family that's mixed religion and mixed what they call nationalities. I just want to say that all these governments and all this propaganda about the hate that they try to spread across the world, there's always one winner, and those are the rich people. British Empire was built by rich, and poor people were dying. Same thing here. There's so much corruption around the world by the elite. We're talking about these AIPAC and this Zionist lobby. But what about all these other lobbies that poison us with food? It's always the little people that pay the price. So all I want to say is, let's try not to spread this hate and not let them divide us. And that's the only way to fight this evil. And when people say Americans or people say British, I mean, you're in exile in Russia because little people, there's really little much they can do. It's not Americans that bomb anybody. It's the government's policies, and government do whatever they want. Not every American is against or for this war. And Professor Morandi, who I really like a lot, he always say Americans. And there's nothing in the media, there's nothing in the news. But if you really look at the podcast, there's so many, like a Tucker Carlson, who try to expose all this corruption and all this stuff. So it's not true that there's nobody out there that, voice their opinion against all this hate. So all I want to say is, try to keep your head clear and not blame the people, anybody, British, Germans, Americans. It's not us that it's evil. It's that 1% up there that causes all this and just turn us against each other. That's all I want to say.
Well, it's fair points, and you made them powerfully, Jordan. But if we live in a country where the government is elected, then we do have to share the responsibility. We either didn't work hard enough to make sure that the bad leaders were defeated or stopped. We either didn't vote or we didn't persuade others to vote in a way that they need to. So you can't, if you'll forgive me, you can't wash your hands of it entirely. You have to be able to demonstrate that you did everything that you could to make sure that the politicians who are ultimately responsible for these crimes were punished for them rather than rewarded. I mean, Tony Blair is a case in point. I was one of the top leaders of the movement against the war in Iraq. I was expelled as a Labour member of Parliament, which was the best thing Blair ever did for me, but that's another matter. I then made him rue the day no less than 3 times in 3 different cities by defeating his party in elections. But Tony Blair was re-elected. I mean, he committed the most horrific crime, killed 1 million Iraqis, sent Al-Qaeda and ISIS cascading around the world. He drowned Iraq in blood. He broke it into little pieces. But he was re-elected. He did that in 2003, and he was re-elected in 2005. So when we used to say, as we did, not in my name, well, that was literally true, but it couldn't be said of the British people as a whole. It was in their name. This that's happening in Iran now, and in Gaza, and in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, it is in your name. Maybe not in the name of Jordan in Oregon, but Jordan in Oregon has to show just how hard he tried to make sure that the politicians in whose name it actually was being done should be punished and defeated. Thanks, Jordan. Good call, mate. Big donors tonight. Let me just make the point again. In order for the show to remain independent, it has to be financially supported by you. We have no others. So tonight's top donors, I'd like to say a big thank you to Bruce Marmey, Carlos Sanchez, Rodri Miles, Susan Johan, and Brian Coyle. Thanks for backing Moats. And thanks for keeping us on the air, because it's as existential as that. So if you'd like to support the show, go to moats.tv or support me on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, let's go to Simon in London on Melania Trump. Woohoo! Simon, I'm all ears. Go ahead.
Hi, George. How you doing, mate? Hope you're well. Listen, I've watched I somewhat felt unclean this week, so I kind of had to have a bath after doing this, but I watched the most expensive mannequin ever filmed this week, that being the documentary Melania. I said it felt really unclean after it. Let's get one thing straight. Melania isn't a documentary. It's not even a film in a traditional sense. It's a 2-hour perfume advert, effectively masquerading as an insight, wrapped in glossy lighting and slow-motion shots of someone who appears less human being and more luxury, almost like a model, basically. Now, interestingly, interestingly though, George, the documentary is directed by Brett Ratner, someone who actually appeared in the Epstein files. Now, this is the most shocking thing I found out. This is the most shocking thing I found about it. There's no love between her and Trump. I might be wrong. I don't know, as I said. But when I've seen Nancy Reagan and Bill and Ronald Reagan, there was love. When I've seen Bush Senior and Laura Bush, there was love. Bill and Hillary, they had their differences, but there was love at the end. She stuck by him, you know. Bush Jr. and Linda, Obama, Michelle, you know, even sleepy Joe Biden, who had dementia, loved his wife, Jill, and she no doubt loved him as well, because she looked after him, you know, at your old age. But when I see Melania, you know, all I see is a stone-cold look on her, and there's no love at all. Not only that, George, apparently they sleep in separate apartments, let alone separate beds and separate rooms. They sleep in totally separate apartments, apparently, you know? And the entire documentary is like what she's buying, how she's dressing that evening, what she's decorating, and so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing. You brought this up earlier on. You mentioned earlier on that the speech she did this week, distancing herself from Epstein, was something that caught Trump off guard. And that's the key to it. What if this is the point? No, this is the exact point. What if Melania was a sleeper agent, or some kind of a sleeper, who was instructed to make that speech this week, almost as a warning shot to Trump, to make sure that Trump keeps the Israelis happy no matter what, you know, and keeps their interest at heart no matter what? Because that's what all this seems to point to at the moment, George.
Well, that could very well be true. It was certainly left field. Nobody expected it. Nobody was briefed that it was going to happen. And what she said completely contradicted Donald Trump's line, that it was a hoax, that there was nothing in it, that we should stop talking about the Epstein affair. Move on. Well, she said all the things that she said were the opposite of that. But what I'm left wondering, Simon, is was anyone else in the cinema with you? Or did you go in with a dirty raincoat and sit on your own in the cinema? Who in their right mind went to see that movie with you? Over to you, Simon.
I actually watched it on, believe it or not, I shouldn't be saying this online, but I watched it on Pirate Bay, so I basically skipped the cinema altogether. I didn't want to spend my money and dirty my money and stuff like that, so thanks to Pirate Bay, the hackers and what have you. But yeah, I would not waste my money on that nonsense. But I had to watch it. I just wanted to see what was behind this woman. And when I watched it, I found out there was not a lot. As I said, who would want a girlfriend or wife like that who just doesn't care about you? It's a really sad story when you look at it, when you think about it, George. I know he's a very rich rich man, Trump, but you got to think about the fact that he's very lonely and he's got pretty much no one. Now that's of his own making, but you sometimes reap what you sow, and in his case, he does reap what he sows, effectively. So yeah, I did watch it on my own, and it wasn't a good experience at all. I thought, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Very well said. I, of course, have no idea what Pirate Bay is. Thanks for that, Simon. Peace Creature N1L says they agreed 10 of the points. FFS. Rachel Thompson says never send a real estate man to do a diplomat's job. Miranda Fair says a UFC fight is more their appropriate pay grade. And Jerry4281 says please interview Dave Sweeney, a journalist who was attacked in Lebanon but survived. He was on Tucker Carlson this week. Indeed, a very good friend of mine. Jexter Jackson says fertilizer shortage. Trump's infinitely full of SH1T. Drill, baby, drill. Barry is in California, wants to talk about Iran. On you go, Baz.
Thank you. I asked Jaya if I could ask Scott Ritter, the expert, about these two questions, but apparently the way that you did with Professor Morandi last week. But at any rate, I want to make two brief comments and then ask my two questions seriatim. First, I pray for the safety of Professor Morandi and all animals, plants, and the environment in Iran, Palestine, Lebanon, and the whole region, and your health and heart. And I hope that you've checked out Hawthorne Berry and coenzyme Q10. They were definitely not contraindicated, but you can ask your doctor about your meds. My second brief comment is the last time that Iran invaded was in 1798 to take back Basra. So my first question is, I still can't understand why Iran, I've been watching many broadcasts, I still cannot understand why Iran can't use interceptor missiles to prevent such extensive damage to its civilian infrastructure and to civilians. And my second question, I want to preface by saying, Israel has bombed the Bushehr, the two reactors in Bushehr, Iran, like 3 times, but only caused minor damage. And one of the very few things that I disagree with you about, George, is Iran having nuclear weapons. They're winning admirably without them. And I've gone to jail blockading the last nuclear power plant in California. And you know the connection between nuclear power plants and weapons. And they're also dangerous. Think of Chernobyl and Fukushima. Anyway, so I'm asking you, or hopefully I was trying to ask Scott Ritter, what do you think the chances are of Israel or anyone else using nuclear weapons? Brian Berletic says that the U.S. will never give up on Iran. And Alistair Crook thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu has told Trump, who has been diagnosed remotely by several psychiatrists to have narcissistic, malignant narcissism exacerbated by frontotemporal dementia, that if Trump doesn't keep the war going, that Israel may use tactical nuclear weapons on Iran. So what do you think of those two questions?
Well, I'm not qualified to say on the what did you call it? Malignant narcissism and various temple nodes, and I'm not qualified to judge that. But I know a man in decline when I see one, and I saw one in Joe Biden. I was an early advocate of the fact that Joe Biden's mental decline was already visible in his subterranean presidential campaign in 2020 when he fought the election from a basement, essentially. And I never lost the feeling that Joe Biden really wasn't all there. And I have felt all of this year, but increasingly so, that Donald Trump has lost the plot. That's not to say he doesn't have moments of cogency. He does, usually when he's wheeling and dealing and with his buddies at the MMA or in a casino somewhere. I'm sure that he is the originator of the insider trading that is being done. Might be being done through Baron Trump or one of the other children, I don't know, but I'm sure that Trump has enriched himself by many billions of dollars. So he's not so cognitively challenged that he doesn't know how to make an extra $1 billion or so. But the question of interceptors, it's quite evident that Iran doesn't have them. They may have reinforced their anti-aircraft defense thanks to China and Russia, but it's still woefully short of what Israel has, for example. Israel was at the end shooting down about 40% of Iranian missiles, which still left a whole lot of missiles to get through, but 40% fewer than there would have been. I don't see any evidence that Iran is able to stop the missile incoming, the bombing of the United States and Israel. But latterly, they began to have some surprising kills on some surprisingly sophisticated American warplanes. So it may be that as the conflict went on and as their supplies got better, perhaps, that their people were able to defend themselves. But you're right, the toll on Iran has been very, very considerable, mainly women and children. But when you're fighting the United States and Israel, I'm afraid that is the norm. You'll have heard from Scott Ritter's interview that he thinks a deal will be struck. I know, of course, Brian Belichick's work, and I respect him very much, and I would expect him to be the most pessimistic of the commentators. I am waiting to see what happens. I'm not a philosopher king like they are, but I am an agitator, and I am able quickly to interpret things and articulate them, and that's what I intend to do with this conflict as it goes on. Thank you, Barry. 9 p.m. on Tuesday, tune in to Call the Doctor. Chris Williamson, joined by Dr. Bob Gill with episode 20, looking at the latest issues affecting doctors, nurses, and all NHS staff. Streams live on YouTube and Rumble. That's Call the Doctor, Tuesday the 14th of April at 9 p.m. Now, a quick thank you to Scott, who writes, "Hi George, have been a £10 weekly supporter for many months and couldn't be happier to do so. I'm proud of my association with your show." Big thank you, Scott. Well, I think I'm waiting for another call. I've already spoken with Eric in Oregon. Well, that's Eric in Oregon. It's a new one, another Oregon call. Eric,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I'm in Oregon right now, but I kind of travel all over the United States. I just wanted to say I haven't been a listener very long, but I've recently picked up on you, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm kind of more of a conservative fellow. I gather you're a little more of a left fellow, but I enjoy your direct honesty and all that stuff. So that's what really matters.
Thank you.
Yeah, for start with, we just need to, like, everyone trying to do the left-right stuff. Like, we got bigger problems right now. So I think we can argue about that later, you know? And
I agree,
like I said, I travel all over the U.S. Everyone I know is not into this. No one likes what's going on. So Yeah, it's just crazy.
That seems to be the message.
But people say American.
Yeah, that seems to be the message, Eric, of the opinion polls, and it's likely to cost the Republicans control of both houses in November. I'm not sure that Trump can pull this back from here.
Yeah, I don't think he can either. Everyone who voted for him, because he's like, the first time I ever voted in my life was this last election. I haven't voted before that because I thought, he's like saying all this stuff like that I kind of like, and then he didn't do any of it. Did the exact opposite of most of it. We don't like that.
Yeah.
So I just want like world to know the government is not the American people. We don't like them.
It's a very powerful point, with the caveat that I made to the earlier Oregon caller, that in the end, your country and mine at least, we elect the people that take these decisions that we profess to hate. So first question is, did we vote for it? If we did not, did we dissuade others from voting for it? What are we doing to try and get them out, having done it? How active are we politically? We can't just wash our hands completely of what our governments do, because our governments are doing it on our dime, and they're doing it on the basis of our votes. So we can't claim complete innocence on this matter, is all I'm saying. Eric, thanks for that call. Sorry for the confusion earlier. But now, here's the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. Gayatri, what's rattling?
Well, I was saying the other day of all the unintended consequences this U.S.-Israel war on Iran has caused. As Scott Ritter said earlier, the leader of the KMT in Taiwan did go to China this week, and it is really this is big news. Cheng Li-wen is the leader of the Kuomintang in Taiwan, which is the main opposition party of the governing DPD. And this visit is the first of such scale in 11 years. It's been quite downhill since the DPD took over in Taiwan. And then for her to come over, and she is known as the most vocal pro-unification basically a voice in Taiwan. She said the two sides of the strait will not, as the international community fears, be destined to have war. So obviously what's happening right now shows them that Taiwan should not become another pawn for the US in this geopolitical game. They visited, it was a very highlighted visit, of course. They visited, amongst others, the Sun Yat-sen Memorial, which is very significant because he was the revolutionary leader, he was the founder of the Republic of China, he was the founder of the Kuomintang, and he was revered in mainland and in Taiwan. And this year, 2026, marks his 160th birth anniversary. So this visit is symbolic and also practical in many ways. I mean, China, Xi Jinping has already extended 10 very concrete measures towards Taiwan, including more relaxed tourist restrictions and allowing certain dramas from Taiwan to be aired in the mainland. So it's very practical as well. So that's very good. Another of the unintended consequences further east in the peninsula of Korea, in the south, which is home to 28,500 U.S. military personnel. And for that pays the U.S. an annual bill of $1.4 billion US dollars. They thought they were covered, but then 3 weeks ago, or more, 4 weeks ago, a month ago, as the weeks developed in the Persian Gulf, they saw their THAAD system redeployed to the Middle East for the U.S. forces fighting Iran. So that left South Korea without this the interception of short and medium-range ballistic missiles. So today occurred a remarkable online clash between the president of South Korea, who commented on this. It's really indescribable, isn't it? That video from the IDF soldiers torturing and then throwing this Palestinian child off the roof. So he commented on it, saying, this is not much difference through war incidents during the Holocaust and Japan-era wartime. And this caused an online clash between the Israeli foreign minister and him, who doubled down. The president doubled down on it. He stood by it. So, as Henry Kissinger said, it is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it could be very fatal to be a friend.
Indeed, the best thing Kissinger ever said. Actually, the United States is rapidly losing its friends. They've declared a kind of economic jihad against Spain, which is a moderate social democratic government, albeit led by a very charismatic man, Mr. Sanchez. But they're nobody's idea of an anti-NATO, anti-imperialist government. But Trump has basically anathematized them, has excommunicated them from all relations with the U.S. and basically is calling for a boycott. And the Israelis are rapidly telling us that they were going to go to Spain for their holidays. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But now they're cancelling it, and they're going to go somewhere else.
Well, as he
instead.
arrives in China, of course. Sanchez just arrived in China.
Sanchez is going to make a good deal with China, and China seems to be favoring the Spanish government for special attention. When you think about it, when Starmer followed us to Shanghai, what was that all about?
Exactly.
What has Britain gained from that? I mean, it was very low-key, much more low-key than Macron, much more low-key, I predict, than Sanchez. Was Starmer just checking up on us, or what? I mean, what was he there for? Certainly no good came of it. But other countries too. I mean, South Korea's attack on Israel, Norway's attack on Israel. People are signing petitions everywhere for a breach in relations between the EU and Israel. I mean, if ever two people were Johnny no mates, it's America and Israel in the current moment. Now listen, Gayatri, if we get out right now, we literally still can get chips, which is not something we can say always. So with your permission, I'll take your leave and ask you to join us again on Wednesday for the midweek mother of all talk shows. We don't know what kind of world we're going to have then, but we must hope that Scott Ritter is right and that the ceasefire will hold and the all-out war in the Persian Gulf will not consume us. But if it does, we'll be here to talk to you about it. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.